Hello, Christ is in our midst. I'm Father Kevin Long of St. Elias Antiochian Orthodox Church in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Today is Tuesday, July 21st, and here are the readings for today. The first reading is from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 20, and chapter 7, verses 1 through 12. Brethren, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are from God. Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is well for a man not to touch a woman, but because of the temptation to immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not rule over her own body, but the husband does, and likewise the husband does not rule over his own body, but the wife does. Do not refuse one another, except perhaps for reason of agreement for a season, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come back together again, lest Satan tempt you through lack of self-control. I say this by way of concession, not of command. I wish that all were as I myself am, but each has his own special gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. To the unmarried and the widows I say that it is well for them to remain single as I do, but if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to be aflame with passion. To the married I give charge, not I, but the Lord, that the wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, let her remain single, or else be reconciled to her husband. And that the husband should not divorce the wife. To the rest I say, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and if she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. Today's Gospel reading is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 14, verses 1 through 13. At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard about the fame of Jesus, and he said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He has been raised from the dead, and that is why these powers are at work in him." For Herod had seized John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Because John said of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, "It is not lawful for you to have her." And though he wanted to put him to death, he feared the people, because they held him to be a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before the company and pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she might ask. Prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me the head of John the Baptist here on a platter." And the king was sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests he commanded that it be given. And he sent and had John beheaded in prison. And his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. And the disciples came and took the body and buried it. And they went out and told Jesus. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a lonely place apart. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. There is much to be said about John the Baptist, and one of the things that is most important is that Jesus says, verily, he is the greatest man ever to live. His life was one that was completely dedicated to the service of God. From the moment, really, of his birth until the moment of his death, he did everything that was pleasing unto God. And what's so truly remarkable about him is that he did it realizing that he was not the greatest, but that he was a forerunner, that he was going to be dedicating his life not so that people would remember him so much, but because through him is Jesus proclaimed into the whole world. So he goes and he makes the path straight, and then Jesus comes and does everything that is necessary to save us from death. And so his life is an example of true Christian giving. His life is an example of the way of the cross. Truly, in all of his activities, his baptisms, and in the way that he preached, he brought the kingdom of heaven and made it very real to the people that he ministered to. But again, he did it in a way that was completely based on self-denial. Tragically, what becomes most important, or not most important, but one of the more important aspects of this is the manner in which he did die. He died basically because of the lusts of another man. Herodias' daughter dances before Herod, and he becomes infatuated with her. and promises that he will give her anything that she asks, thinking that she would ask for something material, like half of his land or something like that, and he'd be willing to do that. But instead, because she was coached by her mother, she asks for the death of John the Baptist, asked for his head to be brought on a silver platter. What a terrible thing, and what an incredibly foolish thing to have a man so great with God, a man that is so focused and dedicated on serving, having been thrown into prison because of what he had said and because he offended Herod, then to lose his life because of some stupid pledge that was made by Herod in front of all of those people. But yet all of this helps to drive home the necessary point that this life is indeed temporary, and that there are all sorts of things that can come and distract. And even our manner of dying may be seen as unfitting for the quality of person, but yet he still followed into the very end. His Troparion says that even after his death, he goes into Hades and proclaims to those there the one who is coming, right? And so he never stops proclaiming and never stops being the forerunner, never stops serving God in the things that he does. That is proclaim even to those in Hades, the God who appeared in the flesh, who taketh away the sin of the world, and granteth us great mercy. So we give thanks to God for John and for his example, and for the example of all the saints who through their tireless efforts brought the kingdom of heaven closer to us in this day. May God bless you and keep you, you and your family, and may his peace shine on you forever. Amen.